Welcome back. Now in this session we are going to import our player, either he might be a skater or a runner or a biker. So we are going to import that asset, and this will be a short animation of some 3 frames or 5 frames to show that movement. So we will create it as an animation sequence. You already know what animation sequence is, and also we will set up the obstacles, the game over scene, and we are going to make all the assets ready so that from our next session we can start with the patch editor or the coding. Now to start with, in our last session we forgot to save the file. Remember, this is a very important aspect which we forgot. Go to file, choose save, and in your location in 3 blinking rays, give it the name as blinking rays version 2. Now we are saving it as version 2 because version 1 we failed to save. So I will save it as version 2, and then once I have saved it, now after saving I will come to face tracker, right click, add object, and I am going to add a canvas. I am going to name this canvas as game element. Either you can name it as game element or I can even call it as the player. Okay. So I will call it as game element. I will right click, and in this I am going to add plane here. So on this canvas I will add a plane, and I am going to call this as the player. And for this player, similar to last time, I will come here, click on material, and I am going to create a new material. And once I click on create new material, that material is created in assets here. I will double click it and I will call this as matte player. And for this, again in the setting I will change the shader to flat. And after changing the shader to flat, I now want to add an animation sequence for this matte player. So for this, in the assets, click on the plus sign, click on the animation sequence, and name this animation sequence as Annie underscore player. I will give it a name as Annie underscore player, and for this I will come on the right hand side, and in texture I will choose the file, and I will choose these 3 files, 1, 2 and 3 frames of animation, and click open. So now I have created the Annie player, I have added the texture. Okay, now this frame is imported. Now select the matte player material, and here in texture you select this Annie player. So as soon as you select the Annie player, you can see this character getting animated. It is running. Now I doesn't want it to get animated when the program starts. I want this animation to start only when the game starts. So as soon as it launches, this animation should not be running. So how to control this animation? You come to the Annie player animation sequence, and here in this you have one option called as loop, and below that FPS. Say FPS is set to 25. Say what happens if I set it to 1? Every second it is moving by 1 frame. So it is currently running at 1 frame per second. I will make this 0. Now you can see the animation has stopped. Now I will select this player in the scene, and I will set its scale value to 1000. That is, it means it is 1. So I have scaled it by 1 unit, and after this, in this scene I will drag it and place it exactly on the road. So to bring it on the road, approximately it should be somewhere here. I will move it vertically approximately by minus 280 units. Okay, this is fine, I think. I will move it by minus 280 units, and I want to move him to the left. So when I move him to the left, I will move him exactly approximately by around minus 125 units. Okay, so that he is slightly to the left, and he is scaled at 1, and he is placed minus 280 that is units to the bottom. So we have set up our game player ready now. So, now for this collider what we are going to do is come back to game element, right click and add another plane for this, and the second plane that we are now going to add here, I am going to call this plane as collider. I will give it the name as collider, and as usual come to the right hand side and in material, either you can add the material here in properties, or I can come to the assets, click on the plus and choose material, and for this I will give mat underscore collider. So, I have attached the material. Now, I will come back to collider, I will select collider in scene, and in properties I will click on the plus and I will set its material to mat underscore collider, and I will come back to mat underscore collider and see that its type is set to flat. So, remember, even mat player is flat, mat background is flat and mat collider is flat. So, set this shader to flat, so that because this is a 2D game, we want the materials to be flat. Okay. So, after this, for this mat collider, I am now going to add another animation sequence. For this, I will click on plus and I will choose animation sequence, and this time I am going to call this as Annie collider. And for this Annie collider, I will come on the right hand side and in texture I will choose file, and I am going to select these 3 files, colli1, colli2 and colli3, and I am click open. So, now these 3 are added, and this wait for a few seconds. Okay, this has been added now. So, once this collider has been added, now mat collider here, and in texture now choose this Annie collider. So, as soon as I choose the Annie collider, you can see the 3 frames running fastly, and again here I doesn't want the animation to run like this in my game. I want it to be initially stopped. So, for this come back to Annie collider in animation sequence here, and now in FPS I will set this FPS to 0. So, when I set it to 0, only one frame is available. So, just like last time, if I set it to 1, you can see for every 1 second you have one image of the frame running. Okay. So, you see that what are the 3 colliders are there by setting it to 1, then set this back to 0, FPS is set to 0. And next thing is we have to position this collider correctly. So, for this select the collider, your game element in the scene, and set its scale to 60%, that is I have to type 600 here. So, I will set its time, 1000 means 100% scale. So, I am scaling down to around 60% now. I will press tab 600. So, I have scaled it out by 600, and remember I had moved player along the y axis by 280. I will move the collider down here, and I will set this collider value, I will keep it at around minus 290. I will set its position to minus 290. So, you have the collider here, you have the runner here. So, we have set up both these 2 components. Okay, now coming back here, now the next part I am going to add is, I want to add a score and the number here. So, for this, just like in Flappy Bird, I am going to come back here to the game element. Now, right click, add object, and this time I am going to add a 2D text. And for this text, you can see the text is appearing here. I will come over here, and in the text field of my property, I am going to type all in capital your score, and I will set its width. I want it to be centered. So, what I will do is I will set it width to relative, and I will set the width to 100. So, now what happens is this is exactly set to align to center. Now, here only thing is I will change the color. I will use some it depends on the background that you are using. Say for example, I use some cyan color or yellow color here. I will choose an yellow color and I will click OK. Now, this is I am going to name this text component as your capital score, your score. Then I will again come back to game element, or I will select this your score and see that it is okay, it is placed fine. I will just press Ctrl D to duplicate it, and this I am going to name it as score. And this score in this 3D panel, I will move it down along the x axis a little down like this. So, and align it to the center. Now, you will see these alignment lines. Okay, based on the alignment lines, you align it correctly, and after you align it, you enter some number here. As of now, random number, I will write something like 20. So, I have added the number. So, my score, your score and score is now ready. Now, final one thing that I have to now make ready is the game over component. And now, the final component we are going to now add is the game over screen. So, for this, I will right now close this game element. In game element, we have added player, collider, your score and score. We have this 4 component. I will close this. Now, I will come back to face tracker, right click, add object, and I am going to now add a new canvas, and I am going to call this canvas as GAME, G capital, OVER, O capital. So, I am going to give it the name as game over, and inside this canvas I am going to right click and add a plane, and this time the plane that I am going to add will be called as, this is actually the game over screen. So, I will name it as game over S capital screen, and this game over screen material, right now there is no material applied to it. I will come to assets and I will add a new material, and I am going to name this material as mat underscore game over. And for this mat underscore game over, I will come back to material here and I will change it to flat, and after changing it to flat in texture, I am going to choose file, and in the assets you have one game over BG background, BG file, JPEG file. Select this file and click open. Now, come back to game over screen, and in the material list now choose mat game over, and now you can see this appearing on the screen. Only thing is, this is very small. So, I will click the scale button, and holding it from the center, I will scale it up so that it fits the entire screen like this. Okay. So, I will make it fit the entire screen like this. Then I will select the move tool, and I am going to move it down like this. Okay. Now, only thing is, I want this background, when the game is over, my face should not be visible. I want the entire background blank. So, now for this, to add a white background here, I will come back to game over component here. I will right click and I am going to add one more plane here, and this time for this plane I am going to call this as white plane, or WHITE B capital BGD. I will give it the name as white BGD, and for this plane I am going to come to assets again, and I am going to click on the plus, and I am going to add a new material, and I am going to call this as mat underscore white. This is just a plain white material. I will come back to the material here and see that the color is set to white, and in standard here I will set it to flat. So, I will make this flat. Now, come back to white BGD here in the scene, and in material list click on plus here and attach the material mat underscore white for it. Only thing is, this is in the front of our image. So, I will select this white BGD and put it behind this game over screen, so that it is on the back. It is on the back. I will now what I will do is, I will select the scale and I will just drag it to fill the screen like this, then drag it along the y axis and make it little bigger. What I will do is, I will set this at say for example 0 0 0 position, all 3 will be 0, and then apart from it, only thing is in scale along the x-axis I will scale it by around 5000. Okay, that is along the x-axis I will scale it, and then along the x-axis I will scale it by around say another 5000, and see still longer I want, I will scale it by 8000 and see, or I will scale it by 9000. Okay, so it fills the screen, and along the z even you can keep it just 1000, so it does not matter. So I have set the x scale to 5000, y scale to 9000 and z scale to 1000, and I have set the values of position 0 0 0. So now I have white background and game over screen, and here one thing is, when the user is playing the game, once the game is over there should be an instruction for him to restart the game, and to restart the game what he has to do is he has to tap the screen. So for this I will add an instruction here manually. Last time we added the instruction using the device instruction, but here we are going to add it manually. To add it manually, come back to game over here, right click, add object and add a 2D text, and this 2D text you can see it here. I will double click this and I am going to call this restart text, restart underscore text. So this is the text here, and for this restart underscore text, in properties, in text field, I am going to type here tap to restart, and I will set its width from fixed to relative and set its scale to 100, so that it will be exactly at the center, and let the font size be defont 40. And now only thing is, in this 3D view I will drag it down. Okay, I will drag it down and place it just below this character like this. So we have our game over component also ready. So now we have made all our components ready, and now the only thing now is we have to apply the logic. So application of this logic we are going to do it in our next session.